All right, hello, physical science students. Today we're still in Unit 1, an introduction to physical science, but today we're looking specifically at some of the pieces of lab equipment that we're going to see this year in physical science. In physical science, we do a lot of labs, and so we're going to need to get familiar with the different pieces of equipment and their function. And so that's what we're focused on today. So the first piece of equipment that I want to go over is the beaker. And on all of these slides, I'm going to show you sort of a visual image, and then I'm going to list the purpose of that particular piece of equipment. So the beaker's purpose is mainly just to hold substances. It does a really good job of this for us and the chemicals and substances that we'll use in physical science. You can measure in a beaker. So one of the things you're going to notice on a beaker is you're going to have measurement marks, but it's not very accurate. So if you want an accurate measurement, there's something else that we're going to use. But if you just need to eyeball like 50 milliliters of H2O or water, a beaker would be good to do that. So you can measure, just not accurately or precisely. A beaker is an excellent piece of equipment to use if we're going to heat something on the hot plate. So if I ever ask you to heat up some sort of substance, a beaker is probably what we're going to use. Now, a test tube is a little bit different than a beaker. Most of our test tubes are glass. They are also going to have hash marks on them, measurement hash marks, just like the beaker, but we don't measure in a test tube. We'll measure in a graduated cylinder and then transfer whatever we measure into the test tube. So a test tube is just designed to hold substances, and we can put lots of substances in a test tube rack in different test tubes, or we can use a test tube clamp to hold one particular test tube. But a test tube is mainly to hold substances. If you'll notice, the test tube has sort of a rounded bottom. You would not use a test tube to heat something on a hot plate. There are methods that you can use to heat substances in a hot plate, but you can't just stick the test tube on the hot plate directly. It'll spill. So test tubes are mainly designed to use with other apparatus over the flame of a Bunsen burner. Latex gloves are going to be used sometimes in physical science, especially when we get to chemistry. If there are substances that I feel like might be dangerous for you, if they touch your skin, I might require that you wear latex gloves. So latex gloves just protect your hands. We also might use the hot mitts this year or the heat-resistant gloves. Again, they're just also to protect your hands, but they're used not necessarily when we're working with chemicals, but when we're working with heat. We're going to use the thermometer quite a bit this year. There are different thermometers. We have digital thermometers, and then we have the old manual traditional thermometers. We will talk about in our measurement lesson specifically how to read a thermometer, but you need to know that thermometers measure temperature. This is a pipette. There are different sizes of pipettes. Most of the pipettes that we use in physical science are going to be disposable. They're plastic pipettes, but if we need to transfer small amounts of liquids from one container to another, a pipette is going to be what we use. A test tube rack. A test tube, I mentioned this before, a test tube is used to hold substances, but if I want to hold a variety of substances, I might want to use a test tube rack. Safety goggles, we learned in our lab safety symbols lesson that this symbol will be used when we're working with glass or heat or an open flame or chemicals, and the reason we use goggles is to protect our eyes and our face. A graduated cylinder is going to be something that we use a lot in physical science. We're going to use graduated cylinders that are large, some that are small, some that are glass, some that are plastic. So they come in all kinds of varieties, but the purpose of a graduated cylinder is it measures liquids. It helps us find the volume of liquids, and it does so very accurately. An Erlenmeyer flask has the same function as a beaker, so we can hold substances. It has a flat bottom. It's made of glass, so we can heat substances. But the shape of an Erlenmeyer flask helps us to have a component that's different than a beaker. It will allow us to put a rubber stopper at the top, and this is useful in some of our chemistry labs where we want to trap gases, or if we want to hold substances and we want to keep gases inside the Erlenmeyer flask. So you'll notice that it has sort of a skinny neck, whereas the beaker is open mouth, and the purpose of that is for that rubber stopper. A Bunsen burner is going to be used occasionally in physical science, and a Bunsen burner is similar to a hot plate in that it helps us heat substances, but a Bunsen burner works with an open flame. So what we do is we use a striker to strike the gas that's going to come up through the Bunsen burner to create a nice, good flame for us. And then there's going to be a rubber tubing that connects the Bunsen burner to a gas valve that we have in the classroom. I'll turn on the gas, and we'll practice doing this before we do a lab with the Bunsen burner because it's much more involved than what I'm going over today. But all you need to know for right now is it produces an open flame. A metric ruler, if we're measuring, and we're going to do this a lot in physics, I'm going to require that you measure using the metric system. And so often our measurements are going to be in centimeters or millimeters or meters. And so a metric ruler will be used to measure length, width, and height. There are a couple labs where we will need to crush contents into a powder form or a smaller granule version of what we have. And so we'll use something called a mortar and pestle that just takes a substance and we just kind of grind it up into a substance. This, I know in chemistry, this helps our substances dissolve a little faster. So when we're looking at the dissolving rate of different solutes, we will use a mortar and pestle to crush up or grind some of the substances that we're going to use. A stopwatch, this is going to be used in our physics portion of the course. It's going to be used to record time. A glass stir rod is going to be used to stir chemicals. We use a glass stir rod. We don't use like a plastic spoon or anything like that because we don't want to accidentally mistake something that you can eat with something that we've used in the lab. So a glass stir rod, one, is made of glass, so it's not going to melt when our temperatures get high, and it's not going to be mistaken for something that you can eat with. So a glass stir rod is just going to be used to stir and mix chemicals. This year, we're going to talk about the pH of solutions. So we will use pH paper, which is like an indicator that lets us know if we have an acid or a base or if our solution is neutral. So pH paper is going to help us do that.